Hi everyone, it's Joe with Sharp Eye for Coins, and today we'll be talking about another commemorative coin. So I got my act together finally and picked this one up raw just for this video. I'm really getting into commemoratives, and I've had my eye on the very first commemorative ever issued in the United States, this World's Columbian Exposition $50 from 1892. Let's go back in time here. It's about 15 years after the Civil War. Momentum started gathering in about 1880 to celebrate the 400th anniversary of Christopher Columbus's arrival in the New World. It took about a decade for Congress to pass law in 1890, allowing federal money, toward that exposition for the quadricentennial. And like all huge events, I mean, hosting the Expo would be a great opportunity, right, for any city. Prestige, commerce. So a lot of cities threw in their bid to host, but because they were kind of the richest contenders in the mix, it kind of came down to Chicago and New York just going head to head. New York rich guys like J.P. Morgan and Vanderbilt and William Waldorf Astor, they pledged like 15 million to underwrite the fair, right? If it were awarded to New York. Well, that's like over $400 million in today's, money. So think about that. Now, Chicago had to scramble a little bit. I mean, they're rich guys like Marshall Field and Philip Armour. They pitched in a lot, but it wasn't enough. Chicago's promoters had to get they got financial commitments from the city and the state, sold bonds. The company gathered $5 million in stock subscriptions from just citizens, but still New York was the highest bidder. It wasn't until the last minute commitment from the banker Lyman Gage kind of tipped the odds in Chicago's favor, and Congress voted, I think it was 157 to 101 for Chicago, which set the stage for Chicago to move forward, which would forever change their history. I mean, you got to keep in mind that it was not long ago, the Great Chicago Fire was in 1871. So I can't understate what a big deal this fair was for them. And, people signed on in droves. Artists of the day, I mean, names you should know, like Augustus St. Gaudens, architect Daniel Burnham, Daniel Chester French. They were all on the planning committee. And it's a big deal. I mean, amazing artists. And even St. Gaudens was reported to have said during one of the meetings, "Do you realize this is the greatest meeting of artists since the 15th century?" That's huge, you guys. Construction had started, costs were starting to spiral. And, they weren't constructing cheap disposable buildings like we do today. I mean, they were reshaping the land. They were working in South Park in Chicago. Right now it's Jackson Park, but they were creating sculptures, monuments, attractions on a scale like we don't see, never been seen. Think about the Columbian Fountain, the Republic statue, the Columbus statue. I mean, they were all created for this fair, and there's more. Um, so yeah, it was expensive, and organizers knew they needed to get some of the money back. So behind the scenes, the movement to get the commemorative coin to help offset some of the costs started. It was about January 1892, and James Ellsworth, who was the head of the board of directors for the company, the Exposition Corporation, he was interested in pursuing a coin as well, for other purposes, I think. In September 4th of 1891, he purchased a painting by Lorenzo Lotto for $1,300 that he had had his eyes on since March of that year. And the painting was of, a man uh, said to be of Columbus. Okay. And there's some controversy about this painting because, Columbus died in 1506. And, when was this painting done? Now, Frank Mason, the consul general at Frankfurt, had the painting and had been writing to Ellsworth and said the painting was dated 1501, but arguably it was painted after Columbus had died. So there's a lot of controversy, but nonetheless, that particular painting, I mean, it had royal provenance, all right? The Duke of Palma had it, and Cavaliere Rossi had it. I mean, it was painted specifically for a Venetian senator at the time, Dominic, I can't pronounce his name, Malipiero. So forgive me if I butchered that and you're Italian. Um, anyway, many people thought the painting was a forgery. Okay, um, and it was public. Okay, and Ellsworth was pretty sensitive about it, but still, he had photographs taken, and he copyrighted the images. And he was hoping to make a profit from the marketing of brochures, the images, the painting itself. And he really pushed. So in April 1892, he got approval of the director of the Mint, Edward Leach, for the design of a coin with the Columbus image that he wanted, with on the reverse some kind of inscription. And Leach gave Ellsworth control of the design's process. Okay, now in July 1892, Leach brought in Charles Barber, and you know that name, right? Uh, the chief engraver for the Mint. And Barber said he could not work with that painting because the subject, Columbus, was facing forward. He needed a profile. So the Leach got a lesser known sculptor, Ulrich Dunbar, to create a bust based on that painting. Sent it to Barber in Philadelphia, who prepared sketches based on the bust. And on August 15th of 1892, presented them to the acting Mint director, because Leach was on vacation, and the fair authorities, right, and the press. And everybody hated it. So the it was pretty negative. Newspapers thought the sketches, they made fun of it. They thought it looked like some crazy haired professor, much more than this, admiral. Uh, so that controversy, plus the controversy about the painting potentially being a fraud, really upset Ellsworth, and he withdrew the painting from consideration, that design. So enter Allen Levi Warner. Yes, the Red Book is wrong on his middle name. It's Levi Warner. His dad's name was Levi. Anyway, he had been working on badges to be worn at the fair. The directors were going to wear these at the dedication ceremony in October. The badges featured an image of Columbus in high relief, and after it was revealed, people liked it, or at least people that worked for the company, and it was suggested that they use the badge image for the coin. So there were a few other contenders for consideration, and they needed to make a decision soon. So they called like an emergency meeting, and it was settled ultimately that Barber would work from Warner's badge design for the obverse, kind of like what you see here, and Warner's caravel design from an earlier concept that he had submitted for consideration for the reverse. Now, when Barber sat down to work, he realized that the badge image lacked the space needed for these inscriptions, the writing. So he had to shrink that design, which kept him busy, which means he had to offload the reverse engraving to his assistant, George Morgan. So let's first take a look at what he did. So he shrank the design and put United States of America, Columbian $50 on the face of this coin. Now, on the reverse, George Morgan had to deal with a Santa Maria ship that did not have this level of detail. So George engraved this detail on the ship, and he kept Warner's design of the East and West Hemisphere and the 1492 date. We got the World's Columbian Exposition, Chicago, 1892. Pretty cool. Now, this is my favorite side of the coin, by the way. I love this Santa Maria. Okay, October 17th, Barber had completed his test dies. By the 31st, they made trial strikes, and Leach proclaimed them the best looking coins ever struck by the mint. He was probably only looking at the reverse. But hey, okay, so they move forward. November 19th, 1892, 2,000 coins were first struck in Philadelphia. They said the first attempt was flawed, okay, causing its rejection. Now, according to Walter Breen, it's more likely that it wasn't flawed. You know, we're talking about experienced mint workers. They think that instead the first coin was given to Ellsworth. The guy, he had already had a collection of rare coins. I mean, he had the two versions of the 1804 Drake bust dollar at the time, plus others. So he probably got the first coin. Anyway, they did the 2000, and then they kept churning them out. I mean, minting continued through 1893 with that date until more than the 5 million were struck. Okay, and sales were initially great. There was a lot of marketing and a lot of fanfare, but around February of 1893, they tanked. Okay, and it's probably a result of what we complain about today, high premiums. They were selling these, or trying to sell these, for $1. That's double face, okay? But on top of that, there was a lot of negative press about the obverse design. Newspapers were calling it ugly, you know, and nobody knew who Columbus was or what he looked like, or what, you know. So ultimately, only 358,000, a little bit more north of that, were sold to the public at the $1 price. That left 4.6 million remaining. They had stacks of these, 20 feet high. Eventually, an act of Congress forgave the company, and they took a lot of them back. 2.5 million of the 1893 dates were melted, and still left roughly, you know, 2.1 million still out there. 950,000 with the 1892 date. So they were very common. Okay, and in fact, it wasn't until 1930 that you could actually sell these at the $1 price. It took that long. So ultimately, 2 coins were eventually commissioned for the Expo. This one, and in 1893, the Isabella quarter. Only 24,000 of those were struck, making it much more rare than the halves. But this half still retains the honor of being the first commemorative coin ever minted by a United States Mint, which is really cool. And there's a lot of really great history, a lot of things to remember, a lot of things to learn. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you next time. For now, Sharp Eye for Coins is out.